Adam.
Yes, Anthony?
What do Olivia Newton-John, The Carpenters, Sinead O'Connor, and Tom Jones all have in common?
I can't think of a single thing.
They all recorded the song Don't Cry For Me, Argentina, which was a #1 single off the double album Evita by Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice.
Oh, so they trauma bonded.
Well, we'll let the listeners be the judge of that. But today we are talking about Evita, and it is the story of a person with a fledgling showbiz career who hitches their wagon to another star, leaving others behind who've helped them, and becoming one of the richest and most famous people in their country, if not the world.
Oh my God, it sounds like your goals with this podcast.
Oh no, hardly. I am describing the plot of Evita, the musical, but I could also be describing the plot of the creation of Evita, the musical.
Oh.
We're going to get into it. I'm Anthony Ruth.
And I'm Adam Hibma.
And this is
We Don't Know How to Love Him.
All right, Adam, before we get into the history of Evita, what is going on in Lloyd Webber world?
Oh my God, you're entrusting me with sharing with our audience what's happening in Webber world?
It pained me to hand over the editorial control of Lloyd Webber world to you, but I had so much work on my plate to research Evita that I needed help. So let the cards fall where they may. Tell us what's going on.
You know, it's both like a little bit of a quieter time in Webber world and also a lot's happening. But what's happening is like less dramatic. And I kind of like when there's some drama happening in Webber world.
Yeah.
I feel like he's so good at bringing the drama to his professional life. So
yeah. What's going on or what's not going on?
Not much drama, but lots of productions. There was a really interesting article, maybe you saw this in the Times like a month ago, that was about how these new directors are taking like creative takes on Andrew Lloyd Webber productions.
I saw that. I didn't read it closely, but I did see it.
And some of the productions you've already shared with us in Webber World, but the title of the article is Andrew Lloyd Webber, Darling of the Avant-Garde. So it's kind of acknowledging that that's not oftentimes considered part of his image. It's
been so like mainstream popular.
Totally. And the subtitle is like how hotshot directors are reimagining Cats, Evita, Jesus Christ Superstar, and Sunset Boulevard.
Oh boy.
Some of those
things. We talked about Cats, right? That was the ballroom.
Yes, we've talked about Cats. And we talked about Sunset.
Yes.
So
I don't know if we talked about how it's reimagined.
Other than it being reimagined with an actress who's younger than the other actresses who played it.
Right.
We'll start with Starlight Express, your favorite musical.
Oh my gosh.
Andrew Lloyd Webber's Starlight Express is opening in summer 2024 in the specially designed Starlight Auditorium at Troubadour Wembley Park Theatre.
Whoa. Is that in London or where is that?
It is in London. London is loving their like specially designed spaces these days.
Well, this intrigues me because one of my great regrets in life, despite that it is my least favorite Andrew Lloyd Webber musical that I've seen, is never having seen like the original production of Starlight Express with all the train tracks and everything and like this in what was, I don't know, not a specially designed theater, but definitely a specially designed space.
Did you have the opportunity to see it and you just chose not to?
No, I never had the opportunity. It never came to Chicago and I never went to London or New York in that period of my life.
I'm so sorry. This must be a really difficult... It must be hard for you to talk about, honestly.
It is kind of hard to talk about.
I know you're going to London very soon, but you might be going back again this summer.
I might have to.
You're going to just be a regular London traveler now that your love for Andrew Lloyd Webber has been rekindled.
Did they say anything about how it's reimagined? Like, is it on ice this time?
I didn't read that. I didn't read that much into it. Good question.
Okay.
I didn't care.
I mean, it's already, I think it's fair to say imaginative to put people on roller skates and have them portray trains. I mean, I'm not saying it's a good or bad idea, but I think it's imaginative.
Who other than Andrew Lloyd Webber could have come up with such a concept?
Right. Okay. Well, what else is on the radar coming up?
Eva von Hove is directing a production of Jesus Christ Superstar in Amsterdam in early 2024.
I did hear about this.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's another one. And Eva von Hove has done other really imaginative sort of theatrical productions.
He did the recent West Side Story revival on Broadway.
Yeah, though that one wasn't as successful, I don't think, was it?
It didn't run very long, but I think it also kind of got caught in the crosshairs of COVID.
I think you're right. So that Amsterdam production will be something. Maybe you can do, if it's still open, when Starlight Express is, maybe you could fly to Amsterdam and then hop over to London.
I'm not going to say no to that. If the dates align, I might do it.
I believe that. And maybe you could even fly over to Germany and see the German production.
Yes. So there is a purpose-built Starlight Express theater in Germany, which I think is very close to that original staging. And I've been trying to get Adam to go with me. But the problem is it's all in German and I don't speak German, although I don't know that the show would make that much of a difference.
I don't think there's a lot of depth that will be missed if you don't understand the words.
I'd probably enjoy it more not understanding the words, quite honestly. The lyrics are just they're so like sexual and like ridiculous. It's
like Shining Time Station for adults.
It is. And I don't know why all these like quote unquote children's shows are injected with so much sexuality. But
if Thomas the Tank Engine were a horn dog, that's what this musical, that's the question it asks.
That is the thesis.
I don't know if we've talked about this production in Germany before. Have we talked about it on the show?
I don't think on the show. We've talked about it a lot off the show.
I didn't know it existed before you told me about it. How long has it been running?
Yeah, it's been running continuously for like, it's celebrating a big anniversary right now, according to Instagram. I think it's like 25 years or something.
It's been running. Imagine in Germany, this theater that was built for Starlight Express.
Yes, purpose built. It's like medieval times, but Starlight Express. I don't think you get dinner, though.
No, that's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate.
Are you sure you don't get dinner? It sounds like a dinner theater sort of thing.
It sounds like a dinner theater, but I don't think it comes with dinner, but that would make me want to go even more if it did.
What would you plan a menu for like a train car?
I mean, I'm thinking it's like a turkey sandwich wrapped in cellophane and like a bag of Lay's potato chips.
Romantic dining experience.
And a little mustard packet.
Maybe a mayo packet if you're lucky.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking it's like train car food.
Well, when I thought of train car food, I'm thinking about like my old Hitchcock movies where they actually have like good food.
Those days are gone.
Inflation.
Yeah, at least in the US. I don't know about European train travel.
Good question. Well, that's what's happening with Europe. Well, we're not done with Europe totally, but we're going to skip over to... There's also another production of... I didn't actually write down what the show is. What show is this?
Well, there's Evita coming.
That's it. Thank you. I didn't write down what the show is. So there's
only the topic of today's episode.
So this one is maybe the most relevant to what we're here for. Sammy Canold, who also directed How to Dance in Ohio on Broadway, directed a production of Evita at the New York City Center, and then it's been in various places around the country. It was at the Art in Massachusetts. It just closed at the Shakespeare Theater Company in Washington. So it's been in a few different productions. I wonder if it'll be on Broadway eventually. And it's a take that's very informed by feminism. This is per the New York Times. The director said, I think Evita is a victim and a survivor who learned to use her sexuality as armor.
That kind of aligns with some of the things I read that Madonna had said about the role and the person. Yeah.
So finally, some Sunset news. We have 2 rival Sunset productions happening around the world.
I'm not happy about this.
So let's start with one we haven't talked about yet. So Sarah Brightman of...
And who is she?
So she is Andrew Lloyd Webber's ex-wife. She was the original Christine in Phantom of the Opera, and she is famed pop soprano extraordinaire. Did she fly to space yet?
Was she supposed to?
Yeah, she was supposed to be like the first like singer or soprano in space or something like that.
Oh gosh.
Do you not remember this?
I vaguely recall.
Well, she is going to be in her first musical theater performance in 3 decades at the new Opera Australia season, set to, well, doesn't matter. But she's going to be in the new Opera Australia season. And she inspired and originated the character of Christine, as we talked about.
She inspired Gaston Leroux, and he wrote the novel.
Wait, who's that?
The novel, the Phantom of the Opera novel.
What?
I'm kidding.
Okay. So she'll be starring in a world premiere of a new production of Andrew Lloyd Webber's Sunset Boulevard at Melbourne's Princess Theatre next May, followed by the Sydney Opera House in August. So we have another production of Sunset.
I'm really angry about this.
Oh my God. Tell me more.
I'm angry on multiple levels. So first of all, I think this announcement came out like right around the same time that the current production with Nicole Scherzinger opened. It was like the same week, I think.
It was very close.
There was definitely a lot of buzz about the current production in London.
Yeah.
When this was announced.
Why would that bother you?
It bothered me because it's an old trick from Andrew's bag of tricks. And it harkens back to when Sunset was first produced in the 90s. And Patti LuPone was playing Norma Desmond in London. And before she could even really like perform the role, like Andrew was recording songs with Barbra Streisand. And then I don't remember the exact timing, but early on it was announced that Glenn Close would open a second production in LA. And so there were going to be rival Normas. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we're back in this rival Norma territory where we have Nicole Scherzinger in London and now Sarah Brightman in Australia. And the timing of the announcement makes me think that possibly there was something about the London production that Andrew didn't like, and that he wanted to make this announcement of Sarah coming in, his beloved Sarah, who they're still friends, and this sort of like, you know, person from Andrew's repertory of players over the years. Mm-hmm. And that this somehow is like the real production of Sunset Boulevard. Mm-hmm. Because I don't know a lot about the London one because I'm going to see it and I want to kind of save the experience for when I actually see it.
Meet up for listeners in London.
Yes. But I do know that it's very different. It's a very different take on the original. And I can only think that he wanted to kind of say, don't worry, there's like another, like more traditional Sunset coming.
There will be one Norma to rule them all.
And who better than the person who has recorded about every single Andrew Lloyd Webber song there is, Sarah Brightman.
Well, and I wonder if he wants there to be a revival on Broadway. This harkens back to what happened with Patti LuPone and Glenn Close, which Norma, if there is a Broadway revival, will be bringing their production to Broadway. Will it be Nicole's London Norma or Sarah's Australian Norma?
And I didn't know this when we talked about this last time, but Andrew was a big fan of Nicole Scherzinger's, but they did have a little bit of a falling out because he wanted her to take Cats to Broadway, the Cats revival, and she backed out, and he was very angry. And he made a lot of negative quotes about her to the press.
What did he say?
The one that sticks in my mind is she just blew her chance at winning a Tony.
Which I know you said this to me, not when we were recording the podcast, right? But you were like, I
don't think that a revival of Cats, Grisabella I don't think anyone in that role is going to win a Tony. I'm sorry. Like, it's not, and it's nothing even against the role or the song. I just think it's very hard for revivals to win Tonys for an actor, unless it's like a really big part, like The King and I. Like, that's one where often the actress playing Anna will win a Tony or will be up for a Tony, or Mama Rose. Gypsy. Or something like
exactly.
But I do not see it being this person who really is more of a featured actor in a musical, actor, actress.
Totally.
Performer. So anyway, maybe she would have been nominated, but I think it's very unlikely that anyone would win a Tony for that role in a revival.
Absolutely. I'm trying to remember the last time that an Andrew Lloyd Webber performer won a Tony.
Glenn Close, probably.
Did she win the second time as well?
No, just the first. I don't think she was... I can't remember. I remember looking up at the time whether she would have been in contention or eligible the second time, but I don't think she would have been.
What about School of Rock? Did anyone win for School of Rock?
Oh, good question. Maybe.
That'd be the only...
That's a good question.
I don't think anyone won for Evita, did they? Did it...
Not the revival.
Not the revival. Well, and actually, to be fair to Andrew Lloyd Webber, his shows run for forever. The people aren't eligible for more Tonys. I mean...
That's right.
Phantom ran for, 35 years?
Right. Yeah.
So in the meantime, a lot of shows... I mean, how many times was Gypsy revived?
It's true.
The amount of time that Phantom ran.
That's such a good question. At least 2.
I think 3. Tyne Daly. I think probably Tyne Daly's production.
Yeah.
Brenda Peters' production and Patti LuPone's production.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, do you have any more angry thoughts about this?
I have one other. So on the other level, it bothers me on is I just don't care to see Sarah Brightman play Norma Desmond.
I was going to say period, but...
Well... I think she was a fine Christine. I have nothing against her as Christine. I have nothing against her voice, really, but what I take issue with is this kind of role that she has come to play where she is this, like, interpreter of Andrew Lloyd Webber. And I just don't really think her voice lends itself to all of the music of Andrew Lloyd Webber's that she has sung over the years. I'll say this. I think if it hadn't been announced the way it was announced, I would be more sympathetic to this. Like, I'd be, like, a little bit more like, oh, that's nice. Like, his ex-wife, who is well known for Phantom, is going to do this other show that is one of his other, certainly most well-known roles that he's written, probably more for the PR around it than the actual role. But the way it was announced kind of set me against it. And so
there's no hope now.
Yeah.
I'm reading a little bit about her background, and she was actually trained in dance.
She was in a group called Hot Topic that was a popular, like, pop group in London that Andrew was actually quite fond of.
Oh, okay.
Is there any more ALW news?
The only other news is that the Sunset Boulevard, Nicole's Sunset Boulevard, did open, the one directed by Jamie Lloyd, and I think by and large the reviews are pretty good.
Yeah.
Especially I think for Nicole's performance of it. I don't want to say a lot about it. I want to hear more after you've seen it. But the New York Times said, so it seems appropriate that its bravura new West End revival should, in creative terms, be itself a little mad, reckless and daring, stretching its source material to the limit and beyond.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
It's going to be so different.
I would like to go just to be standing outside the theater for when Joe sings Sunset Boulevard and, like, wanders around the outside theater space being filmed.
I did hear that. So when they sing the song Sunset Boulevard, the character of Joe, he's outside of the theater and his performance is projected into the theater via camera.
And for our listeners who aren't regular theater goers, that is not a normal thing that happens in theater.
No, but it did happen in
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma, but they were still in the theater.
They were still in the theater, but they did a lot of, like, projections and, like, filming of people's faces.
Yeah, they did that. And then it happened in the Evo production of Network.
Oh, interesting. Like the Faye Dunaway movie?
Yeah, he adapted it into a play and they used cameras.
Oh.
There was some of that of people being off stage, but on camera.
That would be interesting. I recently rewatched,
and I think even outside,
The Eyes of Laura Mars with Faye Dunaway. Do you know that one?
I don't.
It's one that Barbara was supposed to star in. John Peters wanted her to star in, and then she didn't want to do it, but she ended up singing. It's the only movie where she sang the theme song, but wasn't in the movie.
Oh, wow.
I'm like a prisoner captured by your eyes. I've been
That's
taken,
so beautiful.
And I've been hypnotized.
Wow. That's so beautiful. I wonder why Faye Dunaway didn't sing it.
Are you channeling Andrew Lloyd Webber right now?
Yes, and actually, some of these names are going to come up again when we get into Evita history.
I know. Also, background for the listener based on that joke. Faye Dunaway was also supposed to star in Sunset Boulevard, was famously hired, I believe, to star in Sunset Boulevard, and then was fired after Andrew Lloyd Webber was like, she can't sing the songs, which, like,
right.
Why would you hire someone who can't sing the songs just to then have to fire them?
Right, because she did sing in the audition.
Yeah, like, it's not like you can't, like, fake that. Like, you can either do it or you can't.
Yeah, she was going to replace Glenn when Glenn moved to Broadway.
Yeah, so poor justice for Faye Dunaway.
Yeah. I would have loved to see Faye Dunaway play Norma Desmond, assuming she could sing it.
That'd be...
I think she'd be fierce.
Absolutely. Didn't she play Maria Callas a few years later?
She did, and again, I was too young to get myself to the theater. I think I was in like middle school or high school. She did the national tour, and I remember the commercial. It was sensational. Mm-hmm. Now, is there anything else going on in Lloyd Webber world?
Nothing
to hear about?
Nothing of note. No.
Okay, then let's take a little break, and when we get back, you're going to hear a lot of these names again when we get into Evita history. Okay, Adam, we're back, and we are going to get into some history of the show Evita. Are you ready?
Woohoo.
All right, so we left off with Jesus Christ Superstar, and after that show, Andrew and Tim were not in total agreement about what their next project should be. Andrew ended up writing the musical Jeeves, which is about the British butler character. And Tim started out working on this show, but then he backed out to focus on a different project that he was much more passionate about. There was a BBC radio series about 1950s idols, and he caught the episode about Eva Peron, who came from poverty in Argentina to become a well-known actress and ultimately the First Lady of Argentina. She also was a person who, like their last subject, had lived a short life and changed history.
They love that.
They love that.
And it's not Hitler.
It's not Hitler.
It's not Robin Hood.
No, but people did compare it to a musical about Hitler, which we'll get to.
Oh, okay.
Like Jesus, she also died at 33. She died of cancer. So there were some similarities to their last subject. Mm-hmm. But Tim was the one who really was taken by this as a topic. He became really obsessed. He even went to Buenos Aires to do research.
Oh, wow.
With his girlfriend of 2 weeks.
His girlfriend of 2 weeks? They traveled to Argentina?
Yes, he took her to Argentina.
Sounds like a reality show.
Her name is Jane McIntosh. She had been dating Richard Gere at the time.
Really?
Yes.
Was he famous then?
He had been... I don't think famous, but she had been working as a production assistant on Grease, and he was in it. Do you remember when Chicago, the movie, came out and they made such a big deal about how he had been in Grease? He played Danny in Grease.
Oh, like the Broadway.
The stage show.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Huh. And she'd been working on it in London and he was in it and they were dating. Okay. And then she left him for Tim Rice.
Wonder if that was the right choice.
Well... We'll get to that, but Andrew stuck with Jeeves.
Andrew and Jeeves. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it was panned by the critics. And it didn't help that it opened the week after Hal Prince's production of the Sondheim show, A Little Night Music. And many of the reviews compared the two, and Jeeves was the lesser of the two.
Oh, much I think I'd agree with.
Yes. So this brings Hal Prince back into the picture. Hal Prince, who Andrew desperately had wanted to direct Jesus Christ Superstar, but he missed out on the opportunity because his parents didn't open his mail. He never got the letter from Hal saying that he would have liked to direct the show. And it would have been a great coup to have Hal direct it because he had been a successful producer of Broadway shows like Pajama Game and West Side Story. Also a very celebrated director, notably of Stephen Sondheim's shows in the 70s, Company, Little Night Music, and then the shows Cabaret, Fiddler on the Roof, many, many well-known shows.
Yeah.
So he was definitely a big star in the theater world at the time. And I think Andrew was sort of carrying a torch for him ever since missing out on the superstar possibility.
Ever since he missed that letter.
Yes. And he received another letter from Hal Prince that he did open. And it said, "I've just seen Jeeves. Bank the score. Remember, you can't listen to a musical if you can't look at it. Are you writing anything else?"
Oh.
So I think, or we could posit the question, did Hal Prince, is he the one who gave Andrew permission to recycle his songs?
I think that Andrew was doing it before.
I think he was already doing it, yeah. But it certainly reinforced it as like an okay practice.
Mm-hmm.
So they met up in a bar, and Andrew told Hal that he was probably going to write a musical about Eva Peron with Tim. And Hal made him promise that he would bring it to Hal first.
Oh. Hal really believed in him.
I guess.
So it's Hal Prince's fault.
So by that time, Tim had the plot, he had a script, and he had some lyrics for Evita. He was really focused on it and very dedicated to this project.
And had Tim written the book for... Well, was there a book?
Yeah, I mean, I think he would like architecture the story, and that would be like considered the book. And then obviously he would write the lyrics, the libretto. So yeah, I think he was kind of the driving force behind the architecture of the story.
Yeah, because now that I think about it, they're not book musicals, they're rock operas. So I guess there wasn't a book in the same way. Like the script would be different.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, the script is more like, and then Eva goes to Buenos Aires, and it's like the scene.
They're kind of storyboarding it or whatever.
Yeah. So he had approached a few other composers, including Paul McCartney, but nobody wanted to do a musical about Eva Peron. He'd also married Jane McIntosh by this time, and they had a daughter who they named Ava.
He was obsessed.
That's how enthralled he was by his subject.
It's like how he felt about George the First or whatever his name is. Oh, Richard. Come back, Richard. Your country needs
Richard. You. Yeah. Richard the Lionhearted.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, I don't know whether or not Richard came back, but Andrew did come back to Tim.
Well played.
A little bit with thanks. A little bit with his tail between his legs because of his failure with Jeeves, and he asked Tim if he would still want to work with Andrew on Evita after that.
After abandoning him.
Well, Tim had been the one who dropped out of Jeeves.
Oh.
But I think Andrew, he chose Jeeves over Evita, kind of, too. So they both had kind of pursued their own paths. And then Andrew said, I would like to work on Evita if you will still have me.
Oh, okay.
And Tim said, yes, of course, don't be ridiculous. And they went off to Biarritz, France to write. I think they had gone somewhere else to write Jesus Christ Superstar, and that worked well for them. So
they went to like Herefordshire, something like that.
Yeah, so this time they went to France. And they started writing. In his research, Tim had discovered that Che Guevara was Argentinian, and he had invented an insecticide that he tried to patent during the Peron regime. But his patent was denied. And so Tim was intrigued that perhaps Guevara had been this capitalist who it might have been the rejection by the Peron regime of his product that led him to become a revolutionary. So that was how the Che character was kind of injected into the show.
Okay.
The insecticide plot did not make it to the stage production, but it can be heard on the original concept album.
I've always said there's not enough insecticide in the musicals that I listen to, like
especially Andrew Lloyd Webber musicals. I'm sure you'd love to douse them in insecticide.
I was hoping that Cats would be the one to bring in some insecticide, but alas.
Yes. Also, the Che character was another narrator, so this was kind of a structure that they had used before of having a narrator in the show.
When something works, why change it?
Yeah. Andrew was concerned that there was no one in the story to empathize with. We could do a whole podcast just on the politics and history of the Perons themselves. So I'm not going to get too deep into that, but
Season 2 of the podcast, the Perons.
I don't know if I want to spend that much of my life with the Perons, but it was confirmed that Juan Perón aided and abetted Nazis and other things. So
yikes.
So there are some bad stuff in his history for sure. Mm-hmm. And Andrew wasn't sure how to make audiences care about Eva, and he didn't know if that was even the right thing to do. Tim had said to him, "I know you think she's a bitch, but make her wonderful."
Oh.
Tim was agog for Eva.
Put that on a t-shirt. Agog for Eva.
Andrew felt that he needed a device that would allow audiences to keep an emotional distance from Eva, but also make them understand why she was so beloved.
Okay.
And so I'm going to read to you now an abridged excerpt from his memoir about the device he came up with and how he came up with it.
Okay, please speak as closely to his voice as you can.
If I did anything, it would be the voice of the audiobook voice artist, but I'm not even going to do that. He wrote, "I remember back in 1969, I saw one of the last ever concerts by Judy Garland at London's Talk of the Town. Non-perform might be more accurate. Judy was an hour late on stage, and the dinner theater crowd, fueled by the cheap house champagne, was restless, to put it mildly. Eventually, she stumbled on, made a stab at the trolley song, but was so blurred and incoherent that audience members threw coins on the stage. What happened next was unforgettable. She motioned to the musical director, and he started playing Over the Rainbow. As she stumbled through her signature song, the booing and whistling grew louder and louder. Over the Rainbow, her anthem, the song which is indelibly Judy's and Judy's alone, was devouring her like a vulture on a battlefield. If I could find an anthem for Eva and turn it on her, like Over the Rainbow had been turned on Judy, it would unlock the story musically. That afternoon, I wrote the slow tango melody of Don't Cry for Me, Argentina. At the end of the show, the anthem becomes her broken final broadcast to the Argentine nation. It has come back to bite her like Over the Rainbow bit Judy. I knew that its construction used music as manipulatively as you can get, but that's what a through composed score can do, and I felt good about it." How do you feel about it, Adam? Have you heard that story before?
No, I haven't heard that story before. I mean, that's heartbreaking.
How do you... Yeah.
It's heartbreaking what happened to Judy. I do think of Andrew Lloyd Webber as musically manipulative, so I think that's a fair assessment of himself.
He does have some self-awareness.
But it's heartbreaking. That's very sad.
Yeah. I take a little bit of issue with the language of like, it came back to bite her, it devoured her. If I could turn it on her, it feels not only manipulative, but kind of mean-spirited or like, cruel. Yeah. And I don't know. Like, I like the idea that he had. The way he tells it just sounds very cruel to me. And I feel like it could be a smart idea without a cruel execution, maybe. And it maybe would have come out the same way in the end, but just the way he talks about it feels so mean-spirited to me. It bothers me.
The way he talks about Judy or the way he talks about using it, or both?
Both. Both. Like, I don't know if it's in this passage I read. Yeah, he says, if I could find an anthem for Eva and turn it on her. It just feels very cruel to me.
Yeah, he's going for her.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but that was the idea behind Don't Cry for Me, Argentina, and that was the idea that kind of unlocked the score for Andrew.
Should it have been unlocked?
Don't Cry for Me, Argentina was not the original lyric or title. The first lyric was, It's Only Your Lover Returning.
It's only your lover returning.
Yes. And Andrew hated it because of that extra it's.
Yeah, that I was struggling with that.
That like pickup note. He's like, that's not how it goes. So he complained to Tim, and Tim changed it to All Through My Crazy and Wild Days.
All through my crazy and wild days.
Yeah. Okay. Which doesn't actually scan that well either. The emphasis on wild day, like wild. wild day.
Yeah.
Like, the emphasis feels wrong.
Yeah.
So they had that in, but they both thought it was a bad line. I also don't know if the rest of the chorus was the same at that point, but later on she says, all through my wild days. So it's like, I don't know, saying it twice sounds really bad to me too. So then the line "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina" was already in the show. It's the first line that Ava sings at the beginning of the show, and it's to the same melody. And
Don't
Andrew
cry
kept lobbying.
for me, Argentina. Oh, there we go. We've nailed it.
Thank you for the illustration. Yeah. Andrew kept lobbying Tim for that to be the title and the lyric, but Tim said it didn't make any sense with the rest of the lyric, which is kind of funny to me because we've talked about like "Any Dream Will Do" and those lyrics not really making any sense.
Yeah.
But eventually, Andrew says they threw logic to the wind and went with "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina." Which
that should be the title of Andrew's memoir.
Throwing logic to the wind.
Logic to the wind.
That is actually a pretty good summary of his career.
I think it's accurate.
In some ways, I think the less strategic he's been, the more successful he's been.
Interesting.
If you think about like Cats, like there was no strategy behind Cats.
He was wildly successful.
And then you think about Sunset, which he was so like he wanted to control like every aspect of that production and ensure that it would be a hit.
And just how poorly that did. Yeah, or how fraught it was would be a better way to say it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fraught, and I would say maybe it wasn't a bomb or anything, but it didn't succeed to the level he hoped, for sure.
No, and I don't think it's done much for his reputation.
Yeah. So anyway, like Jesus Christ Superstar, they recorded Evita as an album, and Ava was sung by Julie Covington, who was kind of a up-and-coming actress, singer at the time. And Che was played by Colm Wilkinson.
Colm?
On the album. Yeah.
Okay. Who later Les Mis fame.
Yes, he originated the role of Jean Valjean in Les Mis, and then he played Phantom in the first Toronto production of Phantom, and he's been called out by his co-star for being too rough with her on stage.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In that production. Yeah, Rebecca Kane. So just had to say that.
Yeah.
But all this time, Andrew had continued courting Hal Prince. He'd had a secret meeting with him.
Secret?
Showed him the material.
Who's this a secret from?
Tim.
Why?
My theory on this, I mean, I think Andrew had like a platonic crush on Hal, like a professional crush. And I also think that both Andrew and Tim were kind of at a point in their careers and in their partnership where they wanted to see if they could do it without each other. Like they knew that they had some success together, but they also were like, could I do this without the other?
Interesting.
And I think Andrew didn't want to have to run certain decisions by Tim. I think there were things that he thought, like, I want to do this, and I don't want to have to ask permission. But he also knew that he would need Tim's permission. So I think he was doing this in secret to kind of get it to a point where it couldn't be undone, or where it was like that it was so far along that Tim couldn't say no.
Yeah.
Like he could say no up front and then it would be dead in the water,
Ask for forgiveness, not permission, but not that he's going to ask for forgiveness either, but.
And I also think he just like wanted to hang out with Hal.
Yeah.
And like cultivate that relationship. So they had a secret meeting. He showed Hal the material. I think that's also probably why it was secret, because Tim probably wouldn't have wanted him to share the material. And they made a pact that Andrew would visit Hal at his vacation home in Mallorca and play him the album when it was finished.
Just imagining Andrew like donning a disguise and like hopping from like a taxi to like a train, like secretly getting there, making sure Tim doesn't know.
It's very Muppets. It's very Miss Piggy in a trench coat.
They need to make a Muppets version of the creation of Evita.
Oh my God, that would be great.
Please.
So Andrew did spend several days with Hal and his family in Mallorca behind Tim's back. And while he was there,
what a healthy collaboration.
He kept wondering, I know, he kept wondering, like, when are we going to listen to Evita? And they finally did. And according to Andrew, Hal was immediately hooked on directing it. But he did have some suggestions and he wanted to contact Tim. So now they had this problem of like...
What a tangled web we weave.
Yes. Andrew... Well, they decided that Andrew should lie.
Thank God. Okay, keep going. I'll reserve more judgmental thoughts for when you're done with this.
You can share them.
Like, when he's writing about this now, does he have awareness of like, what was I doing? I was young. This was dumb.
No, he doesn't say anything like that.
Oh my God. Okay, keep going.
And I think I am the one who put in the words lie, or am calling it a lie. But basically,
they strategized.
They decided, they strategized.
Brilliantly so.
That Andrew should say, well, I don't really know what the problem would have been with Andrew going to Mallorca, but that was the part that they didn't want him to know. So he said that, so what they decided to say was that Andrew sent Hal the recording for his comments, and that Hal would then reply to both of them without letting on that Andrew went to visit him. And so when Andrew got back, he told Tim that he'd sent the recording to Hal and that he was intrigued as to whether or not Hal would reply.
Oh, wow. So sneaky.
Yeah. And not long after, Hal sent a 3,000-word memo to Andrew and Tim with his notes.
So nice to receive this record.
Yeah.
How thoughtful of you.
A good chunk of it is republished in Andrew's memoir.
You'll have to visit me in Mallorca one day.
Yeah, how nice it would be to see you. It does have a very, like, love affair quality to it, this whole thing. So, secret affair. But he does include a lot of notes about the lyrics in particular, and the story, and the feedback is very curt and short. Even though he says a lot of nice things, the things that he doesn't like, it does kind of sting even me as not having anything to do with the creation of the show. I'm like, ooh, that's kind of an ouch.
Do you have any examples or no?
These are some quotes from Hal Prince in his memo to Andrew and Tim. I'm sorry, but I do not like Dangerous Jade. I wish that you would excise it. In Rainbow High, I do not like the reference to Lauren Bacall, principally because it distracts. Tim, I'm aware you may be offended by this, but so Saint Bernadette me faintly embarrasses. Again, it distracts. And then at the end, he says, Tim, I wish I'd met you. It might make some of these criticisms easier to take in a more personal context.
Wait, he acknowledges that he's met Andrew in that?
Well, I think Andrew said that he ran into Tim.
Oh, okay.
Or he ran into Hal. They met for a drink and he gave him the recording.
Gotcha.
But he doesn't say that he went to Mallorca. So I don't think that memo made Tim any great fan of Hal's. They did re-record that song, Dangerous Jade, that Hal said he didn't like. But a lot of the changes were not made. Like the Lauren Bacall lyric is still in the show.
What do you think of the Lauren Bacall lyric?
I always liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It does distract, but I don't know, in a good way to me. I like it. What do you think?
I don't know it.
Oh, it's from Rainbow High. She says, I'm their savior. That's what they call me. So Lauren Bacall me.
Oh, yeah. I think it's clever.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
So on the record, they simply called Evita an opera, not a rock opera, because the music wasn't really rock, nor was it a musical. The record came out in 1974, and it was sort of the reverse of Superstar. So Evita was a big hit in the UK, but not in the US.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And Don't Cry for Me, Argentina was a #1 hit on British radio. It has a 1-minute orchestral opening that would seem to make it a non-starter for radio, but DJs found it to be kind of daring.
Interesting. I was going to say, the radio cut had a 1-minute orchestral opening.
Even the radio cut did, yeah.
They must have cut a lot for the radio cut.
I don't know. He does talk a lot Andrew talks a lot in the memoir about like the actual engineering of vinyl and like how much sound you can fit on a side and what it does to the quality of the sound if you try to fit more length onto a side. That was a big problem with Evita, actually. But we only have so much time here,
Yes,
so
okay.
I'm not going to go into that. But if you want to hear about
I don't.
the cutting of Evita vinyl, go read Unmasked, a memoir by Andrew Lloyd Webber. So we talked about some of the other artists who sang Don't Cry For Me, Argentina. It became kind of a...
Old Man River of the day.
Yeah. So it was a number one hit in England. It also became a number one hit on the disco charts, but not a remix. Do you know why it became a number one?
But not a remix?
It wasn't a remix. It was the actual song from the opera.
Because of the orchestral opening?
No, it was because DJs would play it at the end of the night to clear the dance floor.
That's really funny.
I thought you would like that. Before Evita was staged, there was an overture by the English National Opera to debut it there. But Andrew didn't think trained opera voices were right for the score. There was also talk of debuting it as a film, but that did not pan out either.
Well, movie musicals were not big then either, so...
No, but it was actually Alan Parker who ultimately directed the film, was one of the people who approached them before the musical even to say, would you consider making a film of this? But they wanted to stage it first.
Okay.
Andrew was afraid of the same thing happening with Evita that happened with Jesus Christ Superstar, where the theater production was not strongly produced. And he wanted Hal not only as a director, but because he had his producing chops as well. Because by that time, they were still under contract with Robert Stigwood. But he had really started to get more involved in movies. He had done Saturday Night Fever and Grease. And they were not expecting that he would have a strong hand in bringing Evita to the stage. But he couldn't get Stigwood to agree to hire Hal.
Oh.
And so he was playing coy, and he even said, I'm not sure if a stage production is right for Evita. And he was also keeping Hal warm on the side. And eventually he went back to Mallorca
He had two lovers.
to try to woo Hal. He did. He went back to Mallorca to try to woo Hal once and for all. And Hal did agree to direct the show, and it sounded like at that point Stigwood had already reached out to him too. And so at long last, Andrew had finally snared Hal Prince.
At long last, love.
Yes. And it would be a long engagement because Hal was not available for almost another year. But that only heightened the public anticipation for
a lot of foreplay.
The stage Evita. Yes. Yes. When it came to casting, they were concerned that it would be hard to find an actress who could play Evita every night.
Patti LuPone would agree.
Yes. And at one point, Hal proposed actually having 3 different actresses play Eva in the same performance. So kind of portraying different aspects of her character.
Oh, which has become a really big thing these days.
Yeah, what else does that?
The Cher Show.
Yeah.
Fun Home.
Yeah.
Are there multiple Tinas?
I don't know about that one.
I don't know. But having multiple actresses playing the same person, especially when it's a real life person, has become a thing.
Yeah, and I don't think that it was necessarily at different ages in his conception. I think it was almost like different facets of her personality.
Interesting. Almost like in Smash, the Shadow Marilyns.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So Andrew and Tim said that was not their vision and the idea was scrapped. They wanted Julie Covington, who had done the recording, but her acting career was taking off and she didn't want to be typecast as a pop singer. So she turned it down, and they ended up casting Elaine Page.
Elaine Page.
Hair and Jesus Christ Superstar and chorus roles. She was largely unknown at the time. And they had a big press event to announce her, but they didn't let her do any interviews to keep her as an enigma.
Yeah, like Sarah Palin in the 2008 election.
Oh my God, you're right. There is actually footage of Elaine Page coming out on a balcony and raising her arms as part of the announcement of getting the role.
Oh my God, like Sarah Palin at the Republican National Convention.
Did she do that? Did she raise her arms?
I don't think she raised her arms. I don't know.
I could see it.
Inspired by, yes.
Yeah. What do you know about Elaine Page?
She's British.
Yeah.
Didn't she also sing I Know Him So Well? Isn't she in that, like...
She's in Chess, yeah.
Yeah, with the music video, the, like, wild music video of I Know Him So Well. She was in
Chess, yeah. And she was in Sunset Boulevard.
Oh, yeah. Did she replace Patty?
Not immediately, I don't think. But she has done a lot of the same roles as Patty.
And also a lot of the same roles as... Who's the actress who wouldn't let me take a picture of her?
Oh, Betty Buckley.
Yeah, hasn't she and Betty Buckley done a lot of the same things?
Well, they've both done a lot of the same Andrew Lloyd Webber roles.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should tell that story.
I know, we'll have to find a time at some point.
Yeah, I got to see Elaine Page in Follies. She played Carlotta, who sings I'm Still Here.
Oh, yeah.
And I gotta say, she was pretty sensational.
I believe it. I mean, she's a legend.
That's like my word of the show, I guess, sensational, because I've already said it like 4 times.
You're gay.
In his book, Andrew says, Elaine handled herself brilliantly throughout rehearsals. She knew when to rest her voice, but her work ethic was 110%.
Is that in contrast to someone else he'll write about soon?
I think there's a lot of subtle shade toward Patty in these chapters in his book. There's some direct shade as well, which we'll get to. But he talks a lot about how much he respects Elaine for her professionalism and how much he admires her. So we'll get to more about Patty, the Broadway Ava, in a little bit. I'm
excited.
Hal's production is often described as Brechtian, which I think that idea of having those 3 Avas also plays into. The show starts in a cinema playing one of Ava's movies, and the movie is interrupted to announce that she's died. The screen at points shows images that accompany the action on stage. There's only really one set piece, and it's a sort of frame that moves and spins around and becomes the Casa Rosada, among other scenes, other settings. And there's almost no color in the production other than the costumes and props. There's no like backdrops or set pieces.
The set's very black and white, you're saying? Or?
Yeah.
Okay,
very black and white.
Okay.
And so is the logo, by the way, which I think is very fitting of the subject. The logo is this like black and white illustration of Ava Peron.
I did see that. Listener, Anthony has... Is that your record? Is that an LP?
Yeah, it's the LP.
Anthony has the Evita LP.
American cast recording.
Oh, the Patti LuPone one.
The Patti LuPone. But I do love the Evita logo because I think people were very black or white about her, and the logo is a black and white, like very kind of stark illustration of her face
with like almost like a halo, like a Catholic sort of halo around her head, but it's also like almost a crown of thorns.
Yeah, it looks like a crown. I also think it takes a bit of inspiration from the Argentinian flag, which has a sun on it.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it's like blue and white stripes with an orange sun. So for someone who didn't really want to make Evita in the first place, Andrew was absolutely in love with Hal's production and wrote, the Hal Prince production of Evita was one of those very rare occasions where every creative element came together. The reviews were overall positive. The show was a hit, but some critics did question whether it glamorized Ava and thereby celebrated fascism. Tim's response to this was, if your subject happens to be one of the most glamorous women who ever lived, you will inevitably be accused of glamorizing her. The only political messages we hope will emerge are that extremists are dangerous and attractive ones even more so.
Next week we'll have to remember that and decide if we feel like it was effective.
Yeah, and I think it'll be hard to talk about since we're only watching the movie, but I do think the movie has a different tone than the show, despite being very, I don't know if loyal is the right word, but adhering very closely to the faithful. Yeah, thank you. Very faithful to the original text. So the show won the Olivier for Best Musical and Best Performance by an actor in a musical for Elaine.
The Olivier being like essentially the British Tony.
The British Tony, yes. It ran for over 3,000 performances from 1978 to 1986.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, this was kind of the start of really long runs.
And it was also kind of a new era for British musicals because prior to that, there just hadn't been very successful British musicals.
Yeah.
It was really an American art form. And I saw a clip of Andrew saying that one of the reasons was they had to kind of import talent like Hal Prince from the US to help put on these shows. And the other thing is that most British shows had been very British, like Oliver. So this was also kind of a new thing where it was like a very different subject matter.
Yeah, not about the Brits.
No. It was pretty much assumed by Andrew and also Elaine Page and David Essex, who played Che in the West End, that they would reprise their roles on Broadway. But producers, as well as Hal, thought Americans might prefer local stars. And it was also known that Tim and Elaine Page were having an affair at that time.
What?
Yes. Yes.
What happened to Jane?
They were still married.
Oh, poor Jane.
Yeah. It was kind of an open secret. So that also complicated things because there was chatter that Tim wanting her for Broadway was for personal reasons. And so it was also around this time that Elaine stopped doing 8 shows a week as scheduled. Apparently she had missed about 10 of the first 50 performances because of the vocal demands of the role. But that was not on the schedule. Like, she was scheduled to be 8 shows a week. Okay. And this was around the time that they officially introduced an alternate. And so that also did not help the argument that she should play the role on Broadway. And so it became sort of an unchallenged assumption that they would cast Americans for the American production.
Okay.
And also remember, Andrew and Tim hadn't really had a hit on Broadway at this point. Like, Jesus Christ Superstar had not done that well. And Evita was not a hit in the US. The record wasn't known.
And Joseph hadn't been on Broadway yet.
Right. And so they decided that...
And By Jeeves was not on Broadway.
By Jeeves was not on Broadway.
And Come Back, Richard.
Jeeves.
And Come Back, Richard, Your Country Needs You.
Yeah.
Was not on
somewhere
anywhere.
Along the way, it was originally Jeeves, and then somewhere along the way it became By Jeeves.
Oh, okay. So, okay. An important change.
That must have been the missing link. So they decided they would open it in Los Angeles and then kind of bring it to Broadway to kind of build some buzz.
Oh, they love doing that.
Yeah, they do. And the other concern was that Americans would be even more critical of the Perons and their politics than the British were. So
I wonder why.
I could tell you why they thought that, but I don't remember.
Okay. That's fine. That's fine.
I think we've seen over the years in general, like, Europeans are more relaxed about the subject matter of art than Americans.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was a search for a American Evita. Some of the names that have been mentioned in association with playing Evita on Broadway: Barbra Streisand, Faye Dunaway.
Which is funny. Barbara never would have done it, but keep going.
Yeah, I have more to say about this.
Okay.
Faye Dunaway, Ann-Margret, Raquel Welch.
This list is ridiculous. Keep going.
Charo, Meryl Streep.
Okay.
And one of my favorites, Tova Feldshuh.
Tova. That list is wild.
Yeah, so about this list, I don't think there's an accurate list of like who was really up for the role. I think a lot of it was PR.
Yeah.
A lot of these names are also names that came up with the movie. And I think there was some conflation over the years of actresses who were up for the movie or wanted to be considered for the movie, or who they wished would want to do the movie.
Yeah.
In Barbara's case. So I think this list has taken on a life of its own over the years.
But, I think that's true. Because to address like a couple of them, Barbara never would have gone back to Broadway at that point. She was done with Broadway. She would not have been like, yay, I get to do 8 shows a week again. She was in Hollywood. She was working on getting Yentl done at that point. I mean, I think she was focused on Yentl. And the rest of the list, like vocally, they can't do. I mean, the score is wild. None of them could do that show 8 shows. I shouldn't say. I don't think any of them could do the show 8 shows a week.
I don't think so either.
Even there's some good singers on that list. They could not do this score 8 shows a week. They could do a movie. They can't do this 8 shows a week. Other than Barbara, who wouldn't do it.
No, and none of those names actually came up when we get to like the audition scene and like being in the audition itself.
Yeah.
The only name that we still know and say today is Patti LuPone.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew says he doesn't remember how he first learned of Patti LuPone, but he knows someone gave him a recording of Meadowlark, which is what, like it's like 9 minutes or something. It's the song from The Baker's Wife by Stephen Schwartz.
Probably shorter than Don't Cry for Me, Argentina, honestly, but
I don't think it's shorter. It definitely has more singing than Don't Cry for Me, Argentina.
It does. More singing, more words.
It's a sensational song. And Andrew said that she definitely seemed to have the chops, and he thought the Evita score was well within her range. But he also said that he thought she must have had a cold or bad adenoids when she recorded it.
What?
Yeah.
That dick.
So rude. I know.
So rude. Okay, wait a minute. So, Don't Cry for Me, Argentina is 5 minutes and 20 seconds long. Meadowlark, there's so many different versions of it.
I know.
This one's 6 minutes and 36, but these are all live. So, this one's 5 minutes and 20 seconds. Patti live at Les Mouches is 5 minutes and 20 seconds, which is the same as Don't Cry for Me, Argentina.
Okay, well, then she did have the chops.
She did have the chops. He said it sounded like she had vocal problems when she recorded Meadowlark.
A cold or bad adenoids.
Oh my God. There comes the shade. Okay, take a shot every time.
There's more shade. Okay. He said of the women who auditioned for Ava, Patti was the best overall, but added that his notes said diction, comma, warmth, question mark.
Like vocal warmth?
I think character warmth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is very important for Ava.
Yeah, I know. He also insisted that they hire an alternate out of his concern for the leading lady's vocal cords.
Yeah, I'm sure it was out of that concern, not out of concern for like the money that they would lose if the leading. Of course, they need an alternate.
Right. Well, and by that time, they did have an alternate for Elaine. So.
Out of concern, please. It's out of money. Keep going.
Okay. So Patti LuPone, in her book, she's very upfront and also in many interviews over the years about her difficulty singing the role.
There are 2 chapters. Aren't there 2 chapters on it?
There are 2 chapters on Evita.
Yes.
And there are also 2 chapters on Sunset Boulevard.
On Sunset.
Yeah.
Honestly, listener, if you're gonna listen to one memoir, Patti's is the way to go.
It's pretty great. Even just to hear her reading the chapter titles.
Oh, it's so... I read the book, well, you know, back when it came out, 13 years ago or so? I forget what year it was. I listened to it I read it 13 years ago. I got a copy of it and I read it. And then I recently, this last year, bought the audiobook and listened to it again. And oh my God, it's so good on audiobook.
It is. Yeah, I actually bought it. Well, I have the book, which you gave me, I believe.
Oh, you're right. Signed.
And it's
right?
signed.
Oh.
Yes. No, it's a great book. And I just got the audiobook because I had a bunch of credits. And that was one that I was always like, oh, whenever I need to like burn through some credits, this is one that I'm going to add to my library.
Yeah. It's so enjoyable. So
Patti is very upfront in her book and in many interviews over the years that it was a very difficult role for her to sing. She has said that Andrew Lloyd Webber hates women because of how much of the score sits in the passaggio, which is the weakest part of the voice where it moves from the chest voice to the head voice. So she blew out her voice at the first sing through with the orchestra because she was so excited, like singing over the orchestra. And her doctor looked down her throat at her vocal cords and said they looked like raw hamburger meat.
Oh my God.
And she had to go on complete vocal rest for 5 days. And that was exactly when the opening was. Yeah.
Wait, 5 days later was the opening?
5 days later was the LA opening.
Wow.
And so she did go on vocal rest. She did open the show. And then she couldn't go on the next night.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Andrew does not comment directly on the quality of her voice other than on the recording of Meadowlark. But he does say he had 3 concerns about her. That she wasn't caressing and seducing the audience during Don't Cry for Me the way Elaine did. There's a lot of You don't do it like Elaine did it.
Yeah, I was like, she doesn't caress and seduce the audience. I don't think she does in her performance, but I love her performance. Like, it's just different.
Yeah. She had a tendency to bend the timing of musical phrases and her diction. Those are his three concerns. Of course, her diction has been joked about for years.
It has.
It seemingly was called out in the Washington Post review, which said, as Ava, Patti LuPone must deal with the shallowness of both the character and the authors. It is a losing battle. And since her singing voice is hard to understand in certain registers, her performance comes across perhaps unfairly as one of Evita's serious drawbacks. Yeah. So you can hear in that one review, not a lot of love for the show itself by American critics. Also, not a lot of love for Patti, which she admits in her memoir. She's like, I blew the openings. I did not get good reviews.
Yeah.
And after the opening, Andrew sent her a letter encouraging her to focus on the, quote, actual singing of the material, and said, I am quite sure that if you work on the delivery of the songs, the whole thing will fit into place astonishingly quickly. That every time the show has not gone down as well as it could have done, I find the music is not quite registering, and that the thing to concentrate on now is to match Hal's brilliant production with a great musical performance.
It's essentially just do better. That's what the feedback is.
It's gotta be so hard to be a performer because you put so much of yourself into it. I mean, her whole life at this point is nothing but Evita 24/7.
Yeah.
And she's trying so hard to manage and conquer this role with very little help and support because they're not like creating it from scratch like Elaine had the chance to do. It is a production that's been set and she's trying to create the role for herself, but there's all these expectations around her of like, well, this is where Elaine did this is where Elaine did that. And she's got to block that out and focus on herself. And then you get a letter like this, which you can clearly read between the lines of it. It's almost like, I mean, I almost would prefer the Hal Prince approach of like, this is what I don't like. And then it's like, okay, I'll change it or whatever. But this is so like mired in, I didn't even read all the like saccharine stuff he wrote, which it's like, how can you even believe it if you can read between the lines easily what it's really saying, you know?
Absolutely. Do better or you're fired, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it feels like. I mean, she says in interviews or in her book famously that they kept saying, this is how Elaine does it. This is how Elaine does it. And they're talking about like the famous arm gesture during Don't Cry For Me, Argentina. And she's like, I don't do it like that. I do it like this. And then she like raises her arms and does it in a different way. She does what?
She does a V. Elaine did like bent elbows.
Yeah.
And Patti did like a pure V, like straight arms.
And it's like a famous moment of her like taking control of the role and being like, I do it the way I do it. I'm not recreating something that Elaine did.
It was during the photo shoot and they actually ran that picture in, I think it was Life magazine, next to a real picture of Eva Peron making the exact same gesture.
Oh.
And Patti had never seen that picture. So that was her like, oh, I found the character on my own.
Yeah.
Thing. Yeah. She tells that story on The View. You can find that clip on YouTube. So
I'm sure I've seen that one. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure you have. For listeners who don't know, Adam and I are great View fans.
We love The View. We also love
Deja the View, the podcast.
Deja the View, the podcast. Nothing would give Anthony more joy than acknowledgement or collaboration with Deja the View, the podcast.
I want to do a crossover episode
of
We Don't Know How to Love Him and Deja the View.
Yes. We don't know what that crossover episode would look like. I guess segments of The View related to Andrew Lloyd Webber.
I think it could be that. I also think we could just guest on theirs and talk about The View, and they could guest on ours and talk about Andrew Lloyd Webber. Because they talk a lot about Nicole Scherzinger and Cats on their show. So I think we have a lot to talk about.
We love The View. I send Anthony clips of The View
all the time. Okay, so Patti gets this like veiled, threatening letter from Andrew.
Is that letter recreated in her memoir or in his?
It's actually recreated in his funnily
Interesting.
enough.
Okay.
Yeah. I think he thinks he was being very supportive.
I believe it. I believe it.
The review of his memoir in The New Yorker, Adam Gopnik, brought up the letter and Andrew's attempts to get her to have better diction. And he says she never really did, and it never really mattered.
Love that, Adam.
Yeah. Partway through the LA run, Hal sat the company down and told them that an item would appear in the New York Post saying that Patty was going to be fired and replaced by Elaine. And he told the company that it wasn't true. But later, Patty found out that it was true. And she was going to be fired by the producers, not by Hal. But Hal believed in her. And I guess they had also asked Clive Barnes, like, who should we hire to replace Patty? And he said, no one, just let her figure it out.
What the hell? So they're like waging psychological warfare on Patty at this point.
Yep.
That's just very confusing. Like that Hal said they're not going to fire her, but they are going to fire her.
Well, I think they were going to, but he put a stop to it, and he made the message to the company be that this was never true.
Oh, okay. Even though it was true.
Yeah. But she had to hear that in front of the whole company.
Yeah. And read the article. I mean, the article was out there too.
Super shitty.
Yeah.
So she stayed with the show. She had to record the American recording during the day while performing the role at night.
Oh my God.
Andrew said she brought a hotter Latin flavor to songs like Buenos Aires. But I was worried about her musical accuracy in the score's more dissonant regions. There's so much shade.
Mm-hmm.
But due to the recording, she was not able to go on for the second half of her last performance in LA. And by this time, it was kind of a hot ticket, and people, like, the last performance, like, people were really turning out for her, and then she had to leave at the intermission.
Oh, wow.
Things did not go much better in San Francisco, and then in New York, she had the flu on opening night. So across the board, she just didn't have great openings, didn't have great reviews. The show didn't have great reviews, but her work paid off in that the New York Times review said that she did sing the role well. Overall, though, they said that the story was like reading endless footnotes. And they ended it by saying, you go home wondering why the authors chose to write a musical about materials they were going to develop so remotely, so thinly.
Oh my God.
Nevertheless, the show did become a hit, and it ran for over 1,500 performances from 1979 to 1983. She writes about how hard she and Mandy worked to tell a story, which is hard to follow if you don't know it. And the Tonys helped Mandy Patinkin, who played Che. And it did end up winning 7 Tony Awards, which helped, including Best Musical, Best Score, and Best Actress for Patty.
Wow.
The dress that she was supposed to wear to the Tonys did not work out, and so she ended up wearing her tuxedo. That was her costume for her cabaret show at Les Mouches.
Oh my God. Very like Marlene Dietrich.
Yes. So partway through the run, once she'd kind of settled into the run and she needed to inject some fun into her life, she started doing this late night cabaret on Saturday nights at Les Mouches after her last performance of the week as Evita.
Well, and also after she'd gotten it vocally into her voice.
Yeah.
When she was getting into her voice, there was someone in the company that basically started giving her voice lessons to like help her vocally, because she's such a natural talent, but like help her with technique to like get some technique into her voice. Because this is one of the hardest roles. I think it's true to say it's one of the hardest roles, and especially of its time, it's one of the most vocally challenging roles. And so a member of the company basically became her voice teacher, worked with her, I think, daily. And she said at the start of every day, she would turn on all of the faucets in her house so that she couldn't hear kind of the first noises that she made as she was starting to phonate because her voice was so ragged. I'm sure so swollen. And so she would turn on all the faucets so she couldn't hear herself as she started singing for the day to prepare for the role. And she basically lived, I think, like a monk during the first while in the run while she was figuring out how to sing this very challenging role.
That's 100% accurate. His name is David Vosberg. He was in the company, and they ended up giving him like an extra salary to be her vocal coach.
Love that. Yeah. And she's always been very, I think, honoring of him and the role that he played in her life.
For sure.
I might not know Andrew Lloyd Webber, but I know some things about Patti LuPone.
You do. When her contract ended, she was done with the role, but she did get to have kind of a victory lap when they asked her to play the part in Sydney, Australia.
Oh.
Yeah, so the Ava there had also blown out her voice. And they asked Patti to come in. And she said, "Are you buying my performance as Ava?" And they said yes. And she said she didn't know what that even meant at the time. But when she got down there, she realized that they were starting everything on the opposite foot of what she had learned. And so she said, "No, I'm not doing that. You bought my performance." And the whole company had to switch their choreography, which she said in her book they were happy to do.
Oh.
Because they weren't closing. They were happy that she was there, that they could stay open, I guess.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm sure there was some grumbling. I'm sure they were like so happy to
Yay.
change all of their choreography.
I'm sure. That's funny.
But it was a victory lap because she felt like she could finally sing the role, and she finally got the reviews that she thought she deserved.
Yeah. Oh, a win.
Yeah, good for her. All right. We're in the final stretch here. We're going to talk about the movie a little bit. The movie could also be its own podcast.
Oh my God.
I mentioned Alan Parker. He had originally wanted to direct a movie based on the concept album, but they wanted to do it on the stage first.
Yeah.
After the stage show opened, they came back to Alan and said, "Do you want to direct it?" And he said no, because he had just directed Fame and he didn't want to do another musical. John Peters, who you brought up earlier, a one-time boyfriend of Barbra Streisand.
Leslie Ann Warren.
Oh, was he?
I think they were married. They were either married or like before Barbara or partners somehow.
Isn't he also the inspiration for the movie Shampoo?
He is. Yeah.
So he tried to produce the film, and he promised that he could get Barbara to star in it if they would let him produce it. But they already had producers, so that was a non-starter. And supposedly Barbara did not like the show.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah. Then the next director who was attached to it, most notably, is Ken Russell. And he was hired to direct, and he was very keen on casting Liza Minnelli.
Ooh.
Yes. And we have a little artifact here.
An artifact?
That comes from Adam's personal archive. So years ago, I was at a party at Adam's house. And Adam has a great collection of books, Blu-rays, you name it, vinyl, all kinds of Hollywood and Broadway memorabilia, and not even memorabilia, texts.
Yeah,
textual
text,
archive.
yeah, media.
Original text. And he had this like Liza Minnelli yearbook.
Yeah.
It was like kind of a fan publication. And I was thumbing through it, and I came across this little item about Evita. And I'm going to read it.
And didn't you do like a dramatic reading of it?
I did a dramatic reading at the party, and I'm going to attempt a dramatic reading now.
Yes.
It says Evita, summer 1982. It's a cold reading, by the way. So
Okay.
be gentle. I haven't rehearsed it. Liza screen tested for the film version of the Andrew Lloyd Webber Tim Rice musical. Among other scenes, she filmed the one featuring the song Don't Cry For Me, Argentina. Director Ken Russell describes her test in this way. Waves of electricity, waves of power swept through the studio. Waves of sound, waves of sex. And when she reached her climax with an orgasmic, "I'm coming," so was everyone else in the place. Man, woman, and dog.
Ew. Whose dog was there?
Disgusting.
Ew, that's so gross. Okay.
Disgusting.
Okay, I'm sorry. I wanted
There's
to let
more.
Ooh, okay.
At the 11th hour, it seemed we had found our Evita. That's the end of the quote from Ken Russell, but then the yearbook continues. Those who have seen the footage admit Liza is dazzling. Filming was set to start that fall, but Paramount reneged, and the Robert Stigwood producers group wanted Elaine Page, who had originated the role in London. Russell refused to make the movie with anyone other than Liza. The film wouldn't appear until 1996 with Madonna in the role, directed by Alan Parker. So that's the end of that entry. I would love to see that screen test.
I would too. Put that on the Blu-ray.
Something, yes. Come on, people. If one thing comes out of this podcast, I would love for someone to send us that screen test.
I too would like to orgasm too.
Ew.
I know, it's just so gross. Oh my god. But I believe it. I mean, I believe that. I'm sure Liza would have been phenomenal.
I think, yeah. I mean, it's hard for me to imagine, but I would love to see it.
Mm-hmm.
So that unfortunately did not happen. And when Ken Russell left the project, Stigwood went looking for a new director, and that is when Madonna actually first entered the picture. This was in the 80s. He met with her and thought she was perfect for the part. And Oliver Stone was then hired to direct, and he and Madonna met Andrew Lloyd Webber in his Trump Tower apartment in New York. And this is what Oliver says about it. He, meaning Andrew, played aspects of love for us on the piano after dinner. Then, according to Stone, Madonna told Webber that she intended to rewrite some of the Evita score. At the time, she hadn't done many movies, and she was insisting on script approval, says Stone. I said, Madonna, you can't have script approval. And she wanted to rewrite Andrew Lloyd Webber. Here she was making these demands, and I said, look, there's no point in our meeting anymore. It's not going to work.
Oh.
Yeah. The movie was very close to being made by Oliver Stone with Meryl Streep. It was announced. They had even made some recordings.
Have those been released?
No.
No.
Not that I know of. And there were some riots going on in Argentina at the time, so the film was halted, and then eventually the deal fell apart. I think Meryl at the time was also becoming more successful, and she was raising her demands, and that fell apart as well. It bounced around some more, and then it eventually came back to Stone, and this time Michelle Pfeiffer was attached, but then she got pregnant, and they both left the project.
Michelle Pfeiffer, who famously sang in Grease 2.
Yes. And Hairspray Live.
And
the movie. Hairspray.
The movie,
Yeah. So then, eventually it came to Alan Parker. Madonna swept in. She wrote him an impassioned 4-page letter on why she should play the role. She said, I just knew that no one could understand what she went through better than I. This is from Vanity Fair. She said, I related to her commitment, discipline, and ambition, and bravery required for a girl of 15 to come from the Pueblos and go to Buenos Aires to find her way in entertainment and later in politics. Her suffering as a child was a catalyst to make a better life. I understood that. Because of her enormous impact, her detractors tried to tear her down and desecrate her image. People were frightened of the power she had and undermined her accomplishments by calling her a whore. I can certainly relate to that. So that is a little bit of what you were saying earlier about the upcoming production. Kind of made me think, and like the feminist angle on it. Eva Peron did help women in Argentina achieve the right to vote, the right to divorce, and the right to contraception.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
None of those things they had before her.
Some very important rights.
Yeah. So Parker cast Madonna. He made it clear to her that he was in charge. It was not going to be a glorified Madonna video. Madonna's video for Take a Bow had come out around the time that she was angling for the part. And that was kind of her audition. In the video, she falls in love with a bullfighter in Spain. And actually, the reason I include that in here is because another thread that we're tracking a little bit, that song pushed Madonna to take over Carole King's spot as the woman songwriter with the most #1 hits.
Oh.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Not happy. But if it had to be someone, I'm okay with it being Madonna.
Glad it was Madonna.
Yeah.
Is it now Taylor Swift, or I wonder who it is now?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Madonna did a lot of research for the part. She trained with vocal coach Joan Lader.
How do I know Joan Lader?
I think she coached...
Like everyone?
I think everybody, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very famous name.
Very famous name. They recorded the soundtrack over 4 months. Alan Parker said that Madonna sang the role far better than Patty or Elaine.
Yeah, that sounds like some spin there. Okay.
She did really improve her voice. Like, if you listen to the Evita record, I remember hearing it for the first time and being like, oh my God. Like,
there's a lot more depth to her sound. It's, in my mind, it's less kind of forward and almost nasally as it was before Evita. I feel like there's a lot more roundness to the sound.
Yeah.
We'll talk about this more next episode. Yeah, but there is a change in her sort of vocal quality.
Yeah.
I mean, also, it's to a certain extent comparing apples to oranges because they changed the keys.
Yes, the famous Patty clip from interviews. There were protests in Argentina when they arrived to shoot because Peronists didn't want Madonna playing their beloved Evita. They did not think they were going to be able to film Don't Cry For Me Argentina at the Casa Rosada, where it takes place in the story. That's the president's home. But Madonna met with the president of Argentina, and she was successful at convincing him of the intent, the artistic quality of what they were trying to do. And he did let them film it there, which they did. Nice. And now that scene plays at least once a week in every gay video bar across the country.
I've never been to Sidetrack and not seen that scene play.
Also, famously, Madonna became pregnant while filming.
Oh.
And her mother had died of cancer when she was a very young girl. And so here was Madonna becoming a mother, playing a woman dying of the same disease that took her own mother's life. She said, I kept thinking what my mother must have felt when my father told her she was dying, and how she stayed so cheerful and never gave in to her sadness even at the end.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The movie was quite a big film. Madonna had more than 85 costume changes, more than Elizabeth Taylor and Cleopatra.
Wow.
She wore 39 hats, 45 pairs of shoes, and 56 pairs of earrings.
Okay.
She also wore false teeth and brown contact lenses to look more like Eva Peron. They changed some of the words. There was a lyric that Evita was the New World Madonna with the golden touch. And they changed that for the movie.
That makes sense.
Played by Madonna.
Yes.
She's Our Lady of the New World with a golden touch. The movie and Madonna got generally positive reviews. Madonna was nominated for a Golden Globe alongside Frances McDormand, Debbie Reynolds, Barbra Streisand,
Mira's Two Faces.
Yep. And
Debbie Reynolds
favorite,
for Mother?
Yeah, I think that was Mother. It must have been Mother.
Yeah.
And then Glenn Close.
For?
I don't know.
Ugh.
Maybe it was 101 Dalmatians.
Maybe.
Madonna won the Golden Globe.
I was gonna guess Madonna won that year.
Yeah. But Evita was largely ignored at the Oscars.
I was gonna say, she wasn't even nominated, was she?
No, the movie got 4 nominations. The most kind of prominent one was for the new song, You Must Love Me. Madonna sang the song that night. And this is how Billy Crystal introduced her. Before I introduce Madonna, I want to say one thing. Even though she was not nominated, and there was a lot of speculation that she was going to be, she accepted the invitation. Actually, she called the show to say she wanted to sing and come here tonight. And I thought that was showing a great deal of class.
Oh.
Now, do you know the backstory that probably prompted him to say that?
No.
So it's the same year as The Mirror Has Two Faces.
Yeah.
Barbara was supposed to sing.
Oh, I know that. Yes.
And what happened?
She decided not to sing. I can't remember if she was sick or not, but she decided not to sing.
She didn't miss the Oscars, so she couldn't have been too sick.
You're right. She just decided not to sing. Oftentimes, Barbara, especially in that era, did not like to sing live.
Right.
And so she decided not to sing. Instead, Celine Dion sang. I finally found someone. Celine learned it with like a day to go. Yeah. And then when Celine sang the song, Barbara wasn't in the audience. She was in the bathroom.
I didn't know that detail.
And there was a lot of sort of like, oh my God, she hates Celine, sort of like accusations of like diva behavior or like this was all. And Barbara has said, this was not about any of that. She's like, they don't give you a program. Like, I didn't know when Celine was going to be singing. Like, I just had to go to the bathroom. And afterward, she sent Celine a letter that said, I'm so sorry I missed your song. And she even said,
nice.
Barbara was like, this would have been a beautiful moment because there would have been my song that I wrote and then Celine singing it. And then they could have panned to me sitting next to my love, James Brolin. And it would have been this sort of like beautiful moment. And she's like, why would I have missed that? And so she wrote Celine a letter afterwards saying, I'm so sorry I missed this. Let's work together again. And that led to Tell Him.
Oh, that's nice.
Mm-hmm. That's more than anyone needed to know. But
now, I don't know if Barbara said this or if it was just speculation, but there was chatter that she didn't sing because she wasn't happy with how her film was not recognized at the Oscars that year. That it didn't get enough nominations or something.
I've never heard
that was
why
she didn't sing. So that was sort of the backstory to Billy Crystal's introduction of Madonna. It was a little bit of a dig at Barbara, or it was at least read that way. And the camera actually shows Barbara in her seat when he says that, and she's kind of laughing.
Really?
Yeah.
I kind of don't believe that. I really don't believe that, actually.
Well, I feel like you would know. So if you hadn't heard it, then...
No, and like Barbara directed essentially what's a rom-com.
Yeah.
I don't feel like most people who direct rom-coms are like looking for a ton of Oscar nominations.
Right.
Like maybe she would have liked more than what she got, but like...
Yeah.
And by this point, she'd been overlooked for Yentl, and she'd been overlooked for The Prince of Tides. I feel like...
Yeah.
She wouldn't have been like, I didn't get it for Yentl, and I didn't get it for The Prince of Tides, but I'm for sure going to get it for The Mirror's Two Faces.
Yeah, it really wasn't the one for her to, like, you know, stand on her soapbox or what have you for.
No.
Yeah, those
more
were
drops.
Yeah, those were the optics anyway.
Okay.
So, Madonna did sing the song. The song won. This was also the year of The English Patient, and that was winning, like, all of its categories. And so... when You Must Love Me won the Oscar, and this was a reunion of Andrew and Tim Rice writing together again. Andrew said, well, thank heavens there isn't a song in The English Patient is all I can say. That was a pretty good joke, actually.
That is a good joke.
Yeah. The movie
It's like a nice self-effacing sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The movie cost $55 million and brought in 141, so not bad.
I suppose her movies have never been bigger. This is probably her most respected, though, right?
I would think so, yeah. And she said it was at the time it was like the thing she was most proud of, and she really did work hard on it. And she did really put other things on hold to do this, except for having a family. But this was the last musical that Andrew and Tim wrote together, and going back to my intro, we could think about it as Tim being one of those lovers that Ava, you know, had on her way to fame, and Andrew attaching himself to Hal Prince and achieving bigger stardom, and then leaving his former lover Tim behind, his artistic lover. Yeah. Not that he stayed with Hal Prince, but they did reunite on a later show, which we'll talk about. Down the road. Yeah.
Do we know if Tim wanted to keep working with Andrew, or was this a mutual sort of breakup? Do we know anything about that yet?
I think it was pretty mutual. I saw a interview with Elaine Page where she said that they were working on another show for her, and that Andrew just started working with a different lyricist, and Tim got pretty upset, and that was basically it. But I think both of them were at a point where they wanted to do other things, and if they came up with something that they both wanted to do, they would work together. How true that was, I don't know, but that was kind of where they officially stood with each other. But Andrew has said too that he knew that Tim was getting tired of him, because he admits that he has a bad temper, and you know, he cared so much about sound and things that Tim didn't care about, and then Andrew got frustrated that Tim didn't care about it, and they would just fight, and I think it stopped being fun.
It's amazing that they were able to do what they did, considering I feel like how different they are, and how, you know, they were able to last even for 3 shows might be remarkable. We're almost done. Very briefly, there was a revival in London in 2006, directed by Michael Grandage, and it starred Elena Roger, who is Argentinian. And that came to Broadway in 2012 with Roger and Ricky Martin.
Both
That was
productions.
2012. That was that long ago.
Yeah.
I thought it was like 2016. Okay.
I think it toured in... Well, it toured in like 2013 or 2014.
Okay.
So
Okay. Yeah.
both of those productions ran less than a year. I saw the tour and I did not care for it. I thought it was quite a snooze, to be honest.
Okay.
I actually saw a high school production in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And that was based on Hal's production, I think, because it had like the slideshows and it had like the metal frame and stuff. And I liked that one a lot better than the national tour. So
Wow.
yeah.
Did you drive to Kalamazoo just to see this production?
No, I went with some friends when I was in college. One of them was from there, and her brother at the time was playing Che in Evita, and we went. I mean, I suppose that's why we went that weekend.
Yeah.
But it was a friend trip that included seeing Evita, but we saw it back-to-back nights.
You saw it twice?
Yes.
Why?
Well, what else were we gonna do? We were like staying at their house, and her brother was in it.
So you went to this high school production 2 nights in a row?
Yes.
Well,
And I was not bored.
I believe that. I believe that.
Yeah. So, on our next episode, we're gonna watch the movie.
Woot.
All right, well, that's it for Evita history, this version. There's more, but we just don't have any more time. And we still have to do what Andrew Lloyd Webber songs are giving us life this week.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so let's take a little break and then we'll come back and talk about that.
Sounds good.
Okay, Adam, what Andrew Lloyd Webber song is giving you life this week?
Anthony, I need you to do a better job of listening to Andrew Lloyd Webber songs. So I have
Story of your life.
story of my life. So I have something to contribute to this. I will say that the Andrew Lloyd Webber song that is giving me life this week is from Song and Dance.
Ooh.
I have a soft spot for a song from Song and Dance, probably maybe the most famous, maybe not, that I actually think is kind of poorly written, but is still very emotional. In particular, Bernadette Peters' version of Tell Me on a Sunday. I think it has such a lovely sentiment to it. I mean, this whole idea of like, when you break up with me, like, do it in this like beautiful sort of way, not this like sort of dramatic way. I think it's a lovely sort of wish. I think the text setting is really bad on it.
Yeah.
And whenever you hear like a singer who's not the best try to sing it, when it's like, don't call me at 3 a.m. from a friend's apart, meant I, like, it's just like such a weird, like jump in, interval jump in the middle of a word, apartment. And, like, all of a sudden you do this like 7th leap in the middle of the word apartment for like the non-accented syllable. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but Bernadette Peters does it masterfully. And so that's what song is giving me life this week.
Oh, I love that. I think I feel similarly about that song. I don't love also Another Place Where the Emphasis is Wrong Place, and it's just a crazy lyric. A zoo that's got chimpanzees.
Take me to a zoo that's got chimpanzees.
Tell me on a Sunday, please.
Yes.
I was singing that song once in a class, and I just burst out laughing after I sang that lyric. I was thinking about doing that song too this week, but I decided that it wasn't the song giving me life. I've been trying not to listen to Evita because I want to watch the movie and have it be as fresh as possible. But in reading about the whole concept album and everything, there is a song on the concept album that I really love, and it's Another Suitcase in Another Hall.
That in the show itself, or no?
It is. Okay. But I particularly like the concept album version, which is sung by Barbara Dixon. And it has a very 70s soft rock quality that I love.
That you famously love.
Music. Yeah, I love it in all music, and I especially love when Andrew Lloyd Webber does it. I happened to hear some James Taylor this week as well, and this was like his Sweet Baby James album when Carole King was his pianist. Mm-hmm. And it had a similar quality. Another Suitcase in Another Hall has a kind of guitar forward, but there's like a really nice piano part in it. And it just has that very gentle, soft rock pop lilt to it that I really enjoy. And I love Barbara Dixon's voice. And I like what it says, too, that this person who's a little bit down on their luck and they don't know what's coming next for them, but they always figure it out. And I like it.
Reminds you of yourself.
It kind of does.
Well, that sounds great. I'll check it out. I won't, but I'll pretend I will.
But you are going to check out the Alan Parker film of Evita, because that is what we're going to be discussing on our next episode.
I really don't know Evita, so I am kind of curious. I don't know Evita outside of the clips that I see at the musical theater bar, so...
I cannot wait to hear your thoughts. We'll talk about my history with the film. I'm not in it or anything like that, but just my history of like seeing it and my history of seeing Evita. But it'll be really interesting to hear your take on it as never really having seen any version of it.
Truly fresh eyes.
Yeah. All right. Well, I can't wait. If you like this show, please subscribe to our podcast.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah, like and subscribe, rate and review. Find us wherever you get your podcasts. We don't know how to love him.
We don't.
All right. Bye, everyone.